The hum of the engines was steady, like a low heartbeat pulsing through the cabin walls. Mr. Leo sat by the window, the glow of the midday sun spilling across his tray table. 38 years old, calm by nature, he was the kind of man who preferred quiet, someone who found peace in the muted rhythm of air travel. He adjusted his seat slightly, savoring the soft murmur of first class, the clink of silverware, the faint hiss of espresso from the galley, the scent of roasted coffee blending with reheated bread rolls. For a few moments, it was perfect. Then came the voice. It sliced through the serenity, sharp and impatient. "Excuse me, there must be some mistake." Heads turned subtly, the kind of collective curiosity that travels faster than sound in a confined space. A woman stood in the aisle, heavy-set, her blonde hair styled into a perfectly arranged frame that didn't dare move. Her tone carried confidence, no entitlement. Her name, as Leo would soon learn, was Lauren. The flight attendant, a composed woman with a tidy bun and the badge Reed pinned neatly to her uniform, approached with the serenity of someone trained to handle turbulence, both in the sky and in people. "How can I assist you, ma'am?" she asked politely. Lauren gestured toward Leo's tray table. Her manicured finger trembled with irritation. "That meal right there. That's supposed to be mine." Leo looked up, startled but not yet alarmed. On his tray sat the meal he had ordered weeks before, the upgraded chef special, a small luxury he'd treated himself to before a long trip home. The steak was cooked to perfection, a small pat of melting butter glistening beneath the cabin lights. It didn't look like much, but in that moment it felt like everything he had earned, a small comfort amid chaos. "I'm sorry," Leo asked, his tone level but cautious. Lauren turned to him with the practiced indignation of someone used to getting her way. "I paid for the premium meal upgrade," she said, her voice rising just enough to draw nearby attention. "And that's exactly what I ordered. Not the chicken thing they brought me." Ms. Reed checked her tablet, scrolling with professional precision. "According to our manifest, Mr. Leo pre-purchased the premium meal prior to check-in. You selected the standard option." "That can't be right," Lauren said quickly. "I booked the same C-class, same perks. Maybe it got mixed up. He must have been upgraded by mistake." Leo's lips curved in a faint, disbelieving smile. "I don't think the airline upgrades meals based on luck," he said, tone light but edged with irony. Lauren's eyes narrowed. "You're saying I'm lying?" "No," Leo replied softly. "Just say my steak seems innocent in all this." The quiet humor rippled through a few seats nearby. A couple of passengers exchanged amused glances, but Lauren didn't find it funny. Her shoulders stiffened, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't about the food. It's about fairness. I paid good money for this seat, and I expect what I was promised." Ms. Reed's composure didn't falter. "Ma'am, I understand, but the manifest is clear. The upgraded meal was reserved by Mr. Leo. If you'd like, I can see if there's another option available after service." "That's not acceptable," Lauren snapped. Her volume carried through the cabin now, the kind of tone that made every traveler instinctively sink lower in their seat. "Why should he get special treatment? Look at me, I'm supposed to be in the same class, and I get chicken." The way she said chicken made it sound like an insult. Leo took a measured breath. He could feel the weight of everyone's attention, but he didn't want to make a scene. He'd spent too many years learning the value of patience, the art of letting unreasonable people reveal themselves. Still, something about the absurdity made him want to laugh. Instead, he said calmly, "Ma'am, unless you're my stomach, I don't think this belongs to you." A few muffled chuckles floated through the cabin. Ms. Reed suppressed a smile before quickly regaining professionalism. "Sir, thank you for your patience," she said. "Ma'am, I'll do my best to make your experience pleasant." But Lauren wasn't done. Her voice softened, deceptively sweet. "I just think it's unfair. Maybe he doesn't even appreciate it." She looked back at Leo, searching for something in his expression. Some sign of guilt. Some apology for existing. Leo tilted his head. "Trust me, I appreciate good food." Lauren's jaw tightened. She turned sharply to Ms. Reed. "I'd like to file a complaint. I've flown with this airline before, and I've never been treated like this." The flight attendant remained calm. Of course. I'll note your feedback after meal service. The air between them thickened. The hum of the engines filled the silence that followed, but it wasn't the same comforting rhythm as before. It vibrated now, with quiet tension. Leo looked out the window, pretending to admire the clouds, but he could feel Lauren's glare burning into the side of his face. Moments later, Ms. Reed moved down the aisle, continuing service, her posture unbroken. Lauren sat back, muttering under her breath, the sound of quiet venom. The nearby passengers pretended not to hear her, but everyone felt the shift. First class had become a stage. Leo cut his steak, savoring the first bite, deliberately unbothered. The meat was tender, buttery, perfect. It wasn't about the food anymore, it was about the principle. Lauren's heavy sighs filled the air between them. Each one felt like a statement. He thought of saying something that might defuse the tension, but decided silence would speak louder. If experience had taught him anything, it was that some people crave resistance. Deny them that, and they unravel themselves. Still, curiosity flickered in him. Who was this woman who thought she could bend the world to her appetite? He stole a brief glance. Expensive-looking jewelry, a designer purse tucked under her arm, the posture of someone who wanted to be seen. She wasn't just angry, she was embarrassed. The denial had bruised her ego, and that bruise was starting to swell. Time passed in slow, deliberate beats. The flight attendants moved through the aisle again, offering refills. Lauren declined, arms crossed. Leo accepted with a smile, though the tension still clung to the air. When Ms. Reed passed by again, Lauren leaned toward her. "You really should double-check that order list," she said in a tone that dripped with authority. "Mistakes like that don't look good for a premium cabin." Ms. Reed replied evenly, "It's been double-checked, ma'am. Thank you for your patience." Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned toward Leo, lowering her voice to a hiss. "Enjoy your little upgrade while it lasts." Leo met her gaze calmly. "I plan to." That was the last exchange before Ms. Reed returned to her post near the galley, though she kept a discreet eye on the aisle. Lauren sat back, arms folded, still muttering about incompetence and favoritism. The cabin around them returned to its hum, but the energy had changed. No one spoke above a whisper. As the light shifted from bright white to soft gold, Leo adjusted his seat again, the weight of Lauren's hostility still palpable. He had faced rudeness before, customers, colleagues, strangers on bad days, but something about this felt different. Entitlement mixed with spectacle. She wasn't just angry at losing a meal, she was angry that the world had said no. When the dessert cart arrived, Ms. Reed smiled faintly at Leo, her professionalism unshaken. "Everything okay here, sir?" "Perfect," he said, then lowered his voice slightly. "You handled that well." Her eyes softened with gratitude. "You'd be surprised how often it happens." "I wouldn't," Leo murmured. Behind them, Lauren shifted in her seat again, pretending to check her phone, but clearly listening. Her jaw flexed as if she were biting down on her pride, but it was still there, visible in the tightness around her eyes. She didn't look defeated, just delayed. The next hour unfolded like a quiet duel. The hum of the engines masked the tension, but it was there, woven into every glance, every pause, every subtle sigh from the seat across the aisle. Lauren hadn't forgotten. She never would. Mr. Leo, still by the window, had buried himself in a travel magazine, though he wasn't really reading. His eyes moved across the words, but his attention stayed fixed on the faint reflection in the window. Lauren's restless movements, her impatient tapping, the flick of her wrist each time a flight attendant passed, without stopping. The cabin had calmed, but the calm felt temporary, fragile. Lauren spoke occasionally, not to Leo, but loud enough for him to hear. "Some people think they're entitled just because they click a few buttons online," she said to no one in particular. Her voice carried the edge of self-righteousness, perfectly balanced between complaint and performance. A man across the aisle coughed into his hand, an unspoken cue for her to lower her voice. She ignored it. When Ms. Reed returned to check the cabin, Lauren straightened, smoothing the front of her blouse. "Excuse me," she began, voice dripping with practiced politeness. I just wanted to follow up about that little mix-up earlier. I don't think it's been handled appropriately. Ms. Reed's professionalism didn't waver. As I mentioned before, ma'am, the meal allocation is confirmed. But if you'd like, I can offer an additional snack or drink. Lauren waved a dismissive hand. Snacks are not the point. It's about principle. That man, she gestured toward Leo, shouldn't have been prioritized over me. Leo didn't look up. I didn't realize we were competing, he said quietly, his tone steady, almost amused. The flight attendant interjected before Lauren could respond. Ma'am, if you have a formal complaint, I'll be happy to take it down after service. For now, we need to keep the aisle clear. There it was again, the smile of authority masked in politeness. Lauren's eyes flashed. Fine, she said, settling back into her seat, but her voice trembled with restrained fury. I'll handle it myself. Leo exhaled slowly. He had seen people like her before, individuals who mistook defiance for strength, who believed the world owed them a scene. He didn't intend to give her one. Minutes passed. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the crew prepared for the mid-flight stretch. The air smelled faintly of brewed tea and reheated pasta. Leo leaned back, closing his eyes, trying to let it go. But peace, on that flight, had a short lifespan. A sudden jolt on his tray snapped his attention forward. His water glass tilted, sloshing droplets across the napkin. Lauren stood beside him, pretending to reach for the overhead bin. Oh, clumsy me, she said, her tone falsely sweet. These aisles are just so narrow. Leo looked up at her. The accident wasn't accidental. Her smirk gave it away. No harm done, he replied, though his jaw tightened. Ms. Reed appeared again, drawn by instinct more than sight. Is everything all right here? Perfectly fine, Leo said, wiping the tray with a napkin. Lauren crossed her arms, feigning innocence. You see? He's calm. I'm calm. No problem at all. But there was a problem, one she couldn't hide. The murmurs had started. A few passengers exchanged glances, quiet conversations blooming like sparks. Her performance had begun to fail. The audience wasn't convinced anymore. When Ms. Reed moved on, Leo spoke softly, just loud enough for her to hear. You might want to sit down before you create another accident. Lauren's smile faltered, then hardened. Careful, she whispered. I could make things difficult for you. Leo turned slightly, meeting her eyes. You already are. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt charged, like static before lightning. Then Lauren turned abruptly and marched down the aisle toward the restroom, her perfume trailing behind her like a warning. Leo sighed, running a hand through his hair. He wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of people who thought kindness was weakness. He had chosen silence, but maybe that had been a mistake. When Lauren returned, she carried herself differently. Less frantic, more composed, like someone preparing for a second act. She sat down, pulled out her phone, and began typing furiously. The bright screen reflected in her eyes. Minutes later, she began speaking again, voice raised deliberately. Unbelievable, she said to her phone, though she was clearly speaking for the cabin to hear. Imagine paying for a premium ticket and being treated like this. I'm tweeting this right now. Airline staff ignoring passengers, other passengers stealing upgrades. Unacceptable. Leo looked up slowly. You're really doing this? Transparency is everything, she said with a sugary tone. People deserve to know how customers are treated. Ms. Reed returned, composed as always. Ma'am, please refrain from recording or posting about other passengers. It violates privacy guidelines. Lauren leaned back, defiant. Oh, so now you're censoring me too? I have every right to share my experience. The attendant's patience cracked slightly, though her voice stayed professional. You have the right to file a formal complaint after landing. But please stop filming and causing discomfort to others. Leo watched the exchange unfold like a chess match. Every move Lauren made was desperate, reactive. She was fighting not for food, but for attention, and losing ground fast. He decided to change tactics. When Ms. Reed stepped away, Leo spoke quietly. Lauren, if you're that unhappy, I'll trade meals. If that's what it takes for you to calm down. She blinked, suspicious. Really? No, he said. But it was worth seeing how far you'd go. Her lips parted in shock, and for a second, her mask slipped completely. Anger flared in her eyes, but she had no reply. The passengers nearby chuckled softly. The tide had turned. Leo didn't need to raise his voice. The truth had already exposed her. Ms. Reed reappeared, carrying a tray. Mr. Leo, the purser would like to offer you a complimentary dessert for the inconvenience. Lauren's eyes widened. Excuse me? He gets rewarded for this. It's standard courtesy, Ms. Reed said. He's been patient and cooperative. The chocolate mousse was placed gently on Leo's tray. He thanked her with quiet sincerity, but the gesture did more than sweeten his meal. It deepened the humiliation burning in Lauren's chest. She turned toward the window, muttering to herself, her reflection staring back with a mix of fury and disbelief. The cabin settled again, the tension diluted by quiet laughter and the faint clatter of utensils. Leo didn't gloat. He simply enjoyed the dessert, one deliberate spoonful at a time. The mousse was rich, smooth, and in its way, symbolic, sweetness earned after endurance. Lauren's phone buzzed beside her, but she ignored it. The performance had ended, and she knew it hadn't gone her way. The power she thought she had was slipping. Still, Leo could feel her thoughts radiating from that seat beside him, unresolved and bitter. She wasn't done. People like her never were. He folded his napkin, leaned back, and glanced toward the aisle. Ms. Reed gave him a small, knowing nod, the unspoken solidarity between two people who had weathered the same storm. Outside, the sky stretched endless and blue. Inside, Lauren simmered in silence, her pride wounded but not broken. She looked once more toward Leo's tray, as if measuring what she'd lost. Leo noticed, but said nothing. There was no need. She had already lost the battle she'd started. The cabin had fallen into a shallow quiet, that delicate stillness that comes halfway through a long flight. Overhead lights dimmed to a warm amber hue. Most passengers had reclined their seats, some half asleep, some watching muted movies flicker across their screens. Mr. Leo, however, couldn't rest. The silence felt deceptive, stretched thin over something waiting to snap. Across the aisle, Lauren sat upright, her posture stiff, her phone glowing against the dimness like a small, stubborn flame. She had been silent for nearly 20 minutes, too silent. Her fingers danced quickly over the screen, her expression locked between smug satisfaction and restrained fury. Leo didn't need to guess. He knew that kind of silence. It was the calm before an unnecessary storm. He leaned slightly toward the window, catching her reflection. Her lips were moving, whispering words into her phone microphone. Then he caught a phrase, "harass me," followed by, "I have proof." Leo blinked, confused, then realized what she was doing. She was fabricating her version of the story, framing herself as the victim. His chest tightened with disbelief. The audacity stunned him, but not entirely. He'd sensed it from the start, the entitlement, the desperation for control. Now she was turning it into a weapon. Moments later, she pressed the call button above her seat. The small light flicked on, casting a sharp glow. Within seconds, Ms. Reed approached, composed as always, though a hint of fatigue shadowed her eyes. "Is there something I can help you with, ma'am?" Lauren adjusted her posture, adopting the practiced tone of someone preparing a report. "Yes," she said, her voice loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "I need to make an official complaint. That man," she pointed directly at Leo, "recorded me earlier without permission. He's been trying to intimidate me since takeoff." Several heads turned. The murmurs began instantly, soft but spreading like a ripple across calm water. Ms. Reed froze for half a second, barely perceptible. But Leo saw it. She'd been through this before. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "are you certain about that?" Lauren's eyes flashed. "Of course I'm certain. He admitted it earlier when he mocked me. I want it documented now. This is harassment." Leo straightened slowly, keeping his voice measured. "That's not true. I haven't said a word to you in over an hour." "She's making this up," a passenger from across the aisle added quietly. "We all saw what happened." Lauren turned sharply, glare cutting across the cabin. "Excuse me, Were you part of this too? The man sank back into his seat, unwilling to escalate. Ms. Reed drew a slow breath, her voice calm but firm. All right, let's handle this properly. Mr. Leo, did you record this passenger? Leo nodded once. I recorded a short clip earlier when she was shouting at me and the crew. It wasn't personal, just in case it escalated. I never posted it or shared it. Lauren smirked triumphantly. So you admit it. That's a violation of privacy. Ms. Reed shook her head. Not necessarily. Airlines have their own security policies, and you raised your voice in a public cabin. But I'll verify everything to be sure. She tapped her earpiece, murmured something quietly to another crew member, then turned back to them. Please remain seated while I consult the purser. Lauren crossed her arms, satisfied. Leo could almost hear her thoughts. She believed she'd won. Minutes later, the purser, a tall man with silver hair and a calm, authoritative presence, approached. Good evening, he began softly, addressing both of them. We've reviewed the situation briefly. Ms. Reed mentioned a potential privacy concern. Lauren leaned forward eagerly. Yes, I've been humiliated, threatened, and filmed without consent. The purser listened, nodding, then turned to Leo. Sir, do you have your phone? Leo unlocked it and offered it without hesitation. You'll see the clip. It's 15 seconds long. She's yelling, but nothing invasive. The purser scrolled briefly, the faint sound of Lauren's earlier tirade filling the quiet cabin. Even at low volume, her voice carried unmistakable fury and entitlement. He watched, expression unreadable, then handed it back. I see, he said simply. Lauren shifted. Well, she pressed. What are you going to do about it? He met her gaze steadily. Ma'am, our forward security camera confirms the events. You were standing in the aisle, confronting this passenger and our crew. Mr. Leo remained seated throughout. For the first time since the flight began, Lauren faltered. You checked the camera? Yes, the purser said calmly. All premium cabins are monitored for passenger safety. He paused. Filing a false harassment claim can be treated as a serious incident. We'll be making a report for ground staff to review upon landing. Color drained from Lauren's face. The murmurs returned, now louder, bolder. A few passengers even nodded toward Leo in quiet support. Ms. Reed stepped forward. For the remainder of the flight, I'm asking that both of you refrain from any direct communication. Mr. Leo, you've been patient, and we appreciate that. Ma'am, please remain seated. The purser will finalize documentation before descent. Lauren's lips trembled. This isn't fair, she stammered. He provoked me. The purser's tone didn't shift. I've seen the footage. Let's keep the cabin calm, please. And just like that, the power she had clung to crumbled. She slumped back into her seat, her expression blank and distant. The transformation was almost surreal. Anger melting into disbelief, disbelief into silent shame. Leo didn't gloat. He simply looked out the window again, the deep blue night stretching endlessly below. The faint reflection of cabin lights shimmered against the glass, broken by the occasional blink of a wing's navigation light. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of relief settle over him. Time passed in muted tones. The attendants continued service as if nothing had happened. The cabin regained its rhythm, the clinking of cups, the hum of air vents, the soft rustle of newspapers. But beneath the normalcy, a new balance had been restored. When the captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing descent, Lauren still hadn't moved. She kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, face pale and tight. Her phone lay untouched on her lap. Ms. Reed stopped briefly beside Leo as she secured the cabin for landing. Thank you for your patience earlier, she said quietly. Not everyone handles things as calmly. He smiled faintly. You made that easy. She nodded once before moving on. As the plane began its slow descent, city lights flickered far below, tiny constellations of yellow and white stretching toward the horizon. Leo leaned his forehead against the cool glass, thinking not about revenge, but about irony. How easily people expose themselves when denied control. When the wheels finally touched down with a gentle thud, applause broke out from a few scattered seats. Lauren didn't join in. She sat frozen, eyes forward, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. The purser's voice came over the intercom again. "We ask that all passengers remain seated until the aircraft has come to a complete stop. Certain passengers will be deplaned separately for follow-up with ground staff." Lauren flinched, a barely perceptible twitch of dread. Leo said nothing. Once the seatbelt sign blinked off, passengers began gathering their belongings. Lauren tried to stand, but Ms. Reed's voice stopped her gently. "Please wait, ma'am. Someone will assist you shortly." A few nearby passengers avoided her gaze. Others didn't bother hiding their satisfaction. It wasn't cruelty, it was closure. The woman who had disrupted everyone's peace now faced the silence she had earned. Leo collected his things without hurry. As he stepped into the aisle, he glanced back once, not out of malice, but quiet curiosity. Lauren sat small now, deflated, her earlier grandeur reduced to silence. The air outside the plane felt cool and grounding. The terminal lights glowed pale against the polished floors. A crew member thanked him quietly as he exited. By the time Leo reached baggage claim, the adrenaline had faded, replaced by a calm sense of completion. He didn't feel triumphant, just balanced. Hours later, in the privacy of his hotel room, he wrote a short message online. Not a rant, not an expose, just a reflection. Sometimes people demand the world bend for them. Sometimes the world stays still, and they trip over their own reflection.